Joining me now is Sabrina Schaefer, Executive Director of Independent Women's Forum, also a columnist for Forbes.com, and Jonathan Alter, an MSNBC political analyst and contributor to the Daily Beast. With a welcome to you both. Sabrina,
Alex.
I'm going to start with you here. That was a pretty strong indictment against your fellow lawmakers. Do you think there's any sense that the Democrats' filibuster and the climate that we're in could, in fact, move the needle this time around?
You know, it's interesting because, yeah, I thought the senator's comments were interesting in the fact that she wasn't just pointing fingers at Republicans this time. This is also something that's well known now that Democrats have stalled on. But here's the thing, and I think that it's very easy to want to get behind some of this legislation because it makes us feel good. But when you look at this horrifying attack in Orlando, something that becomes very clear is that in many ways our current gun laws are working. What's not working is the follow-through. So, for instance, we know that there was a gun shop in the area that called the authorities that said, this man seems wrong. We are not selling a gun to him. Something is off. You need to investigate it. And then we know that the FBI did nothing. So I think the conversation needs to go a step further where we're talking about not just banning guns, but what do all these background checks mean if the government doesn't do any of the follow-up?
You know, Jonathan, I spoke in this last hour with former Governor Howard Dean, and he told me that this election could actually become some sort of a referendum against Congress because of their inaction on gun control. He went on to say he thinks that this is the year that something may happen, that it may turn. Of course, we all thought that would happen maybe in the spring of 2014 in the wake of the Sandy Hook shootings, and it didn't. But do you think that could happen now?
Yeah, I do. I just want to say one thing about what Sabrina just said. You know, the guy who called the authority was the one who sold Mateen the armor that he was using. The gun was bought from a different place, and that guy didn't object, the AR-15. So we do have to get control of these semi-automatic weapons. It's just pure insanity that we have so many of them out there. They were banned for a time in the 90s. The ban expired. And at the top of the legislative agenda, if and when Hillary Clinton becomes president, we'll be going back at some of those common sense gun safety measures that the NRA actually used to support. Automatic background checks, closing the gun show loophole, and so forth. But we can't get to those initiatives until we have a presidential election and there's a referendum on this. And Hillary Clinton is running very strongly, very upfront on these gun safety issues. So it's not a second or third tier issue. If she wins a big victory, she'll have a mandate for change, and you could see things change pretty quickly on the gun
So
front.
are you basically telling me you don't expect any action tomorrow from the Senate?
No, I don't. I mean, they might do something very small, but not anything that would be very significant.
Sabrina, you heard part of it, but to further the conversation, Attorney General Loretta Lynch was on all the major Sunday shows this morning saying that the transcripts of the Orlando shooters' calls with law enforcement officials, they're going to be released tomorrow. What do you think is the Obama administration's calculation here?
You know, I think that, look, I think that they do think that they have the ability to put the right foot forward on this, not just on gun control, but perhaps on the issue of terrorism, although I don't quite see that. But I do think because Trump has not necessarily passed that, quote, death test in this instance. He doesn't seem to have his thumb on the pulse of what's really at stake here. We're talking about immigration rather than the fact that this was a homegrown terrorist. I think gives the Obama administration the opportunity to show themselves as the authority here. But I don't really believe that's the case. And I do think that we're really missing this personal human component to all of these horrible shootings. And that is that, once again, every single time we know that there are people who are saying something is not right here. This person is doing something wrong. We're worried they're going to do something wrong. And they don't feel like they have the resources or support to come out and really stop things. And I think that we really should take a closer look at how we can help provide people with that support.
Yeah. Jonathan, Donald Trump has been walking a pretty fine line on guns. He says that he wants those on the terror watch list to be banned from buying guns. Why do you think he isn't telling the NRA and the GOP what they want to hear?
Well, because he's more focused on the terrorism side. You know, in choosing and weighing which is a bigger issue for him, gun rights or fighting terrorism, I think he thinks his better path to the White House is on fear. Right. You know, a lot of what he's said, though, we can't take to the bank on many other issues, and clearly on this. So we have no idea whether he actually will meet with the NRA. Just because he says he's going to do something doesn't mean he won't change his mind by the following day. You know, and his overall take on this, that somehow the response to this should be banning people coming from you know, countries that have been involved in terrorism, when Mateen was an American citizen. He was born very close to Donald Trump in Queens. You know, so he's got the wrong possible solution for the problem, and I think the American people are getting it. They get it now, and he's slipping in the polls a lot.
Yeah, I would agree with John on that, in the sense that, you know, it's easy to jump on him and say, oh, his comments are sort of racially disgusting, and I think in many ways they are. But the bigger concern is that he doesn't seem to have his thumb on the pulse of the policy of what needs to happen. And one role of the commander-in-chief is not only to bring people together after a national tragedy such as this, but to be able to offer concrete steps forward. How are you going to change things? And when he sort of, you know, say, well, he's Afghani, which is not even the case, you know, no, he's from Queens, it suggests that he doesn't really have a good sense of how to tackle this very frightening problem.
So very quickly, I want to ask you guys about House Speaker Paul Ryan standing by his endorsement of Trump, at the same time telling Republicans, vote your conscience. What do you think the calculation is there? Very quickly, Jonathan. Well,
I think it shows that he's not voting his conscience. He clearly doesn't. He said he thinks Trump is a racist. He clearly isn't comfortable with Trump having his finger on the nuclear button. And as Chuck Todd said, Ryan denied it, he's putting party over country. It's not very patriotic. At a certain point, if you want to be a leader, you have to step forward and show leadership. And this idea that as Speaker of the House, he can't take sides, that's not written anywhere. He needs to step up and be a leader. He's not being one now.
All right, guys, unfortunately, I'm out of time. Sabrina and Jonathan, though, good to see you both. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.